Breaking right now, gunfire on a Navy base. Shipyard workers killed. A sailor ID'd as the gunman. I'm David Allen. 11 minutes of nonstop news is now
the mission.
It's a growing movement, sanctuary for gun owners. But what's behind it, and what's it really mean? A historic next step and a combative day on Capitol Hill.
This is not an impeachment. This is just a simple railroad job.
And more women say their implants are making them sick.
And then eventually every muscle in my body hurt from my head to my toe.
Tonight, one woman shares her warning. Those stories and more in moments, but we are starting with a breaking news alert out of Hawaii. 3 people are dead after shooting at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. As we come on the air at 11, the Navy confirms the shooter is one of their own. Let's get you updated on exactly what we know right now. The shooting happened at the shipyard. In all, 3 civilian workers were hit. 2 are dead. Doctors are still working to save the 3rd. The gunman was an active duty sailor assigned to the USS Columbia. He is dead tonight. Navy officials say he killed himself. Within the past half hour, they updated reporters. Here's what they said about the victims.
Did they work together with the sailor?
They were shipyard employees. Again, don't know any relationships. Obviously, in the shipyard, there's always a mixture of active duty personnel and shipyard workers.
Now let's bring 13 News Now reporter Nico Clemens into the conversation. All of this unfolded as he was at the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center. Nico, when did you get the sense that something was wrong?
Yeah, David, it was a little after maybe 3 o'clock Hawaii time when I realized something was going on. That would have been 8 o'clock your time over there in Norfolk. So I saw security officers close these huge gates to the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center. And mind you, I had just stepped out of the Visitor Center maybe 60 seconds before they closed these gates. There was a National Park Service ranger who told people nobody else could come in. So, of course, I was curious, trying to figure out, why are they closing these gates? Why are they stopping people, preventing people from coming in? I then, David, overheard a security officer tell someone there was an active shooter situation at the shipyard. At the time, no real panic. People just started to leave, and there wasn't really too much panic because the shipyard and where the scene was, it's maybe less than 10 minutes away from the visitor center. So it was a good little distance. But at the time, I don't believe too many people knew what was going on. But as you can imagine, David, as more and more people started to come and leave the visitor center, news spread quickly. I could see shock on some people's faces when they were talking to some of the security guards about what was going on. But as far as hearing anything or seeing anything, I didn't hear any shots. I didn't see anybody running, but I did hear tons of police and actually saw tons of police and ambulances racing towards the naval base. Again, it was, maybe the naval base is right next door to the visitor center. That scene maybe 10 minutes away from where I was actually standing. It was a short time after that the Navy officials put that first update out. And
right.
So fortunately, nobody at the visitor center, no tourists, nobody was hurt over there at the visitor center. And security officers, David, they did a great job making sure everyone was safe over there.
Nico, personally, what was it like? Tell us what it was like to be almost in the middle of a story like we cover so often.
Yeah, David, like you mentioned at the beginning, I'm here in Hawaii just visiting some friends, taking a few days off from work, and to be in this situation, it was somewhat shocking to know that this was actually happening while I'm here on vacation with friends, visiting the center, the Pearl Harbor Center. So it was a little shocking, but the news in me, the news reporter in me started to kick in, and I was trying to figure out from police officers and security officers what was going on. Why were they closing the gates? Why were they preventing anyone from coming in? Just trying to make sure that I was safe and just trying to figure out as much as I can. But it was a little bit shocking to know that just a few yards away from where I was standing that this scene was actually going on. But again, fortunately, we were all safe over there by the visitor center. Security officers did a great job making sure nobody else came inside that visitor center, which is somewhat connected to the shipyard.
So, Nico, Saturday is Pearl Harbor Day. Was there a good crowd over there, some Navy veterans? What can you tell us about the crowd that you were in?
Good question, David. Very good crowd, a lot of tourists, as you can imagine, but also inside the visitor center, they're actually setting up right now for that memorial ceremony that they're going to have on the 7th. They're setting up tents. They're setting up chairs. We saw different Navy seamen, different officials kind of setting up speakers and microphones. So they are preparing for this huge, like you just mentioned, memorial event that's coming up on the 7th. Tons of tourists. And so, fortunately, again, everybody was safe in that general area, and there was no danger to anyone at the visitor center.
Well, Nico, thanks for your perspective. Thanks for that reporter in you, and we'll let you get back to your vacation.
Thanks, David. You all take care.
All right, thank you. Let's bring it back to Hampton Roads for a story we've been following all this week, Second Amendment sanctuaries. If you're out of the loop, let me get you up to speed. City or county that claims to be a Second Amendment sanctuary will not enforce any state laws they think infringe upon rights guaranteed in the Constitution. Well, last night, Gloucester County joined the more than 40 county and city governments in the Commonwealth, pledging to become Second Amendment sanctuaries. Tonight, the conversation moved to Suffolk. And if you thought there would be anyone to speak in favor of any sort of gun control, well, think again. Here's Jacqueline Lee.
Give me liberty or give me death.
Cheers and claps dominated Suffolk City Council Wednesday night. The crowd, 600 strong, began trickling in 2 hours before the scheduled city council meeting.
It's important to me. You know, they start with this, and what's it going to be next? It's just going to continue to spiral. So if we can get in there and say, no, we're not okay with this now, it's going to make a difference for the future and for future generations to come.
With dozens taking the podium, the majority of the crowd demanded the creation of a Second Amendment sanctuary.
That we don't need or want their New York Barton paid-for gun control.
To bear arms is a civil right because self-defense is a human right.
This fight over gun control comes on the heels of Democrats winning control over the General Assembly in November, with Democratic lawmakers promising to pass what they call common-sense gun safety measures next year. Attendees say they don't want them.
It's merely to send a message, a loud and clear message to Richmond that the citizens of Virginia are not happy with the Senate bill. We are not happy with the attempts they are making on infringing on our rights to keep and bear arms.
Proponents say gun safety legislation will prevent guns from getting into the wrong hands, assuring no one has to fear getting hurt or killed. But attendees say it'll do the opposite.
So, Jacqueline, no real action from Suffolk tonight on this.
No, so the resolution was not on the agenda, so there's nothing for city council members to vote for. Now, it is worth saying at the end of the meeting, city council members did say to the attendees, go to Richmond and show the lawmakers how you're actually feeling about the topic.
Yeah, this will come up in the General Assembly.
Definitely.
Sure. All right, Jacqueline, thank you. Let's talk a little more about what happened last night in Gloucester. The Board of Supervisors approved a resolution making the county the first in our area to become a Second Amendment sanctuary. But is this something we can expect to hold up in court, or is it just a symbolic move? We had Evan Watson look into that.
Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions are being passed in anticipation of the upcoming General Assembly session, but state law would likely overrule any sanctuary declarations. It's why Norfolk Delegate Jay Jones wrote a letter to Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring asking for clarity and an opinion on the validity of Second Amendment sanctuaries.
Guidance as to what will be the effect of any legislation that we do pass and how localities can and must abide by the things that we put into law.
Virginia is a Dillon's Rule state, meaning local governments are limited to the powers expressly granted to them by the state legislature. Most regulation of guns is decided by the state General Assembly, where Democrats are expected to propose new gun safety legislation in the upcoming session.
No one is talking about taking anyone's guns. No one's talking about infringing upon the Second Amendment. But anything that we pass has to be compliant with the Constitution of the United States and can't preempt federal law in the same way that anything that's passed at the local level can't preempt state law.
Following the Virginia Beach mass shooting and the Virginia special session on gun legislation this summer, Republican leaders directed the Virginia State Crime Commission to issue a report on mass killings and gun violence. The VSCC gave no recommendations, but concluded any changes to gun laws are policy decisions which can only be made by the General Assembly. And before passing a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution last night, Gloucester County Supervisor Chris Hudson seemed to acknowledge the act's symbolic nature.
What we're looking at passing tonight is more figurative than anything. It doesn't have a lot of guts to it.
Evan Watson reporting for 13 News Now.
Well, you know, this story is far from over, and keep in mind the General Assembly isn't even in session yet. We'll keep you updated right here and on the 13 News Now app. Let's take you live to Capitol Hill. Under the dome today, a new round of public hearings, this time in the House Judiciary Committee as the impeachment inquiry enters a second phase. A panel of constitutional scholars testifying on what the Founding Fathers meant by treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Let's take 60 seconds to get you caught up. Here's Serena Marshall.
Two arguments hitting at the heart of the impeachment debate.
If Congress fails to impeach here, then the impeachment process has lost all meaning. If you're going to accuse a president of bribery, you need to make it stick.
What is a high crime and misdemeanor? That's what four constitutional scholars were asked to answer as the impeachment probe enters a new phase in the House Judiciary Committee. The three law professors invited by Democrats agreeing.
President Trump has abused his office by corruptly soliciting President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to announce investigations of his political rivals.
Soliciting itself is the impeachable offense.
And a single legal scholar for Republicans echoing GOP sentiment that the process followed by Democrats was flawed.
His call was anything but perfect. This is not how you impeach an American president.
President Trump weighing in from overseas.
It is the most unfair thing that anybody's ever seen.
But the White House rejected Democratic offers to participate in the hearing. One of the reasons Democrats argue waiting for the courts to weigh in or the 2020 election isn't an option.
One last note here, there could be a vote in the Judiciary Committee on impeachment as soon as next week. Democrats expected to start drafting articles in the coming days, setting up a full House vote by Christmas. Now let's go back live to our breaking news out of Pearl Harbor. A sailor shoots 3 shipyard workers before turning the gun on himself. 2 of those workers were killed. Doctors are treating the third right now. Our newsroom right now monitoring this story closely, and we will be back in about 2 minutes.